Jaren lived alone on the edge of a dusty mining world. The winds were strong, the nights were cold, and machines did most of the work. He was an engineer, not by passion, but by survival. He fixed things, cleaned things, and stayed away from people. He liked machines because they didn't lie, didn't hurt, didn't leave. One day, he placed an order for a second-hand utility robot. He didn't expect much, just a helper for lifting crates, carrying tools, and maybe keeping him company in the quiet nights. He found a cheap deal on the dark network. No details, no warranty, just the words, service unit. Half price, lightly used. He clicked buy, then forgot about it. 3 days later, the box arrived. It was large, made of rusted metal, and buzzing softly like something inside was running low on power. The shipping label was smeared, and the ID code had been scratched out. Still, Jaren was used to junk. He grabbed his tools. Ready to fix whatever was inside, he pulled the lever to open the crate with a hiss. The box slid open and something fell out. Not a machine, not wires, not metal. It was a girl, a young alien girl, thin and shaking, collapsed at his feet. She was naked, teed, curled into herself like she had no right to stand. Her body was marked black. Ink across her arms, numbers glowing faintly on her shoulder. There was a blinking red light on the back of her neck. Like she had been tagged like cargo, Jaren froze. He looked around, half expecting someone to shout, "Prank," or "Got you." But the desert was silent. He bent down slowly. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. She just shivered, eyes wide and afraid, her lips pale and dry. She wasn't just scared, she looked broken. Jaren quickly grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her. She didn't move, didn't resist. He lifted her gently and carried her inside, laying her on the softest thing he had, an old couch covered in oil-stained sheets. He made her some soup, not knowing if she could eat it. She didn't touch it. She just stared at the wall, silent. Jaren checked the delivery manifest again. It still said Service Unit Model 9H. Nothing about a living being, nothing about a girl. He tried talking to her again. "What's your name?" No reply. He pointed to himself. "I'm Jaren." Still no answer. She looked at him like a pet might look at a stranger. Careful, confused, waiting for pain. That night, she slept on the floor, curled up like an animal. He offered her the bed, the couch, even his jacket. She shook her head softly, and when he left the room, she whispered something under her breath. He couldn't hear it clearly, but it sounded like error. Jaren sat awake for hours, staring at the delivery box. He opened the panel inside and found a faded sticker. Property, do not return, damaged goods. His stomach twisted. Who had sent her? Why was she treated like cargo? And more importantly, what had been done to her? He looked over at the girl, still curled up on the floor. Her breathing was shallow, her hands clenched. He knew machines. He could repair anything made of metal. But this was different. She wasn't a machine. She wasn't a tool. She was someone. And someone had thrown her away. As the cold night grew colder, Jaren walked to her and sat near bin, not too close. Not touching, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. He didn't speak, he just stayed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. At some point, her eyes opened slowly. She looked at him with quiet confusion. And then, her lips moved again. Not error. This time, why? Warm? Jaren blinked, surprised. He replied gently, "Because you're cold." The girl didn't reply again, but she didn't close her eyes either. She kept watching him, like she was trying to remember what kindness looked like, and Jaren knew in that moment, this wasn't the end of a transaction. It was the beginning of something else, something fragile, something human, something real. Asterisk, the morning sun rose slowly over the mining valley, shining its dull light into Jaren's small metal cabin. Dust swirled in the air, and everything looked the same as yesterday, but to Jaren it didn't feel the same anymore. The alien girl was still asleep, lying curled on the floor near the heater. She hadn't moved all night. She looked like someone who didn't believe warmth could last. Jaren crouched near her again and whispered, "Do you want food?" She didn't react. He tried placing a bowl of hot soup in front of her. Still nothing. Her eyes were open, but distant, like she wasn't here. Not really. Like her mind was stuck in some terrible place far away. He felt helpless. Jaren could fix broken engines, rebuild drones, even reroute power grids, but he didn't know how to fix a broken soul. He stepped back and gave her space. Later, as he worked outside repairing one of the solar panels, he noticed something. She had moved, quietly. Carefully, she was sitting at the edge of the doorframe, watching him, wrapped tightly in the same blanket. Her eyes followed every tool in his hand. Every wire he connected, he acted like he didn't notice. But his heart felt lighter just knowing she was watching. After he finished, he waved and smiled. "See? Not dangerous, just tools." She blinked, but said nothing. Then, slowly, she pointed at one of the tools. Jaren picked it up and brought it to her, showing her how it worked. Still no words. But her head tilted slightly, as if she understood. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Just a dry breath and then silence. Then, very softly, like a memory, she whispered, "Unit 9H. Jaren's chest tightened. That was the model number on the delivery invoice. She was repeating what they had called her, not a name, not a person, just a number. "No," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "That's not who you are. That's not your name." She looked at him, confused. She didn't understand. He tapped his own chest. Jaren then pointed at her. "You?" She hesitated, looked away, and whispered, "I don't have." Her voice cracked, and she stopped. Jaren felt his throat tighten. Even her identity had been stolen from her. He didn't push her that night. She didn't sleep on the floor. She curled up in the corner of the couch instead, still quiet, still afraid, but just a little closer. The next day, Jaren found a small backpack that he hadn't touched in years. Inside was an old tablet, basic, dusty, but still working. He opened a simple word app and wrote on the screen, "Do you understand this?" He handed it to her. She stared at it for a long time, then, slowly, her finger moved. She tapped the word, "Yes." Jaren smiled. "Great, let's talk this way." He typed again. "Are you hungry?" She typed, "Don't know." Then, "Not used to food." That message hit him hard. Not used to food? What kind of life had she lived before this? He typed again, "You're safe here. I won't hurt you." She stared at that sentence for a long time, then typed, "Why?" He answered, "Because you are not a thing, you are someone." Tears formed in her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. She handed the tablet back and hugged the blanket tighter. Days passed. She didn't talk much, but she started to follow Jaren as he worked. Sometimes she helped holding tools, fetching parts, watching everything closely. She was quick, smart, quiet, but always alert, like she expected someone to come take her away again. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Jaren saw her tracing the serial code on her arm. The black numbers glowed faintly. She scratched at them like she wanted them gone. He walked over with a soft cloth and gently cleaned the area. She looked up at him with tired eyes and whispered, "They gave this to me when I was 6. Jaren's hands paused. She had been taken that young. "I don't remember my mother's face," she said, "but I remember the cold. The metal rooms, the commands." Jaren wanted to scream, but he kept his voice steady. "You're not there anymore," he said. "You're here now." She reached for the tablet and typed, "Why do you treat me like I'm real?" Jaren didn't need to type. He just said it softly. because you are that night. She didn't curl up in a corner. She sat on the couch like a person, her back straight, eyes watching the stars through the window. She didn't speak again. That evening, but when Jaron turned off the lights and laid down to rest, he heard her whisper into the dark, a single word, fragile like glass. Thank you. And in that one word, Jaron knew she was beginning to come back to life. The days were getting warmer. Jaron noticed it in small things, the way the ice stopped forming on the windows. The way the girl no longer wrapped the blanket so tightly. She even started wearing one of his old shirts, long and baggy, on her small frame. But it gave her some comfort, some weight of belonging. Still, she didn't like being touched every time his hand moved too fast near her. Her body would stiffen. She never said anything, but her eyes spoke loudly, eyes that had seen fear. Commands, and maybe worse. Jaron tried to be careful. He never raised his voice, never walked toward her too quickly. He gave her space, but deep down, he knew he had to do something about the scanner tag blinking on her neck. It was small, red, and pulsing every few seconds, a signal, a tracker, a reminder that she was still seen by whoever sold her. Jaron didn't know how long they had before someone came looking. He had to act. That morning, he worked quietly in his back room, preparing tools. He watched her through the glass wall. She was sitting at the table. Trying to understand the difference between a spoon and a wrench, he smiled, but his heart was heavy. Finally, he stepped out and said gently, "Can I show you something?" She looked up, nodded, and followed him. He guided her to the chair. When she sat down, he spoke softly. "I want to remove the blinking thing on your neck. It's not safe." She touched the area lightly. "Tracker." "Yes," he replied, "but it's not just a tracker. It's also a leash." For a moment, she didn't move. Then she nodded once. "Okay." Jaron turned on the scanner and ran it across her skin. It beeped and showed a dangerous warning. "Biotech injection, owner code locked. This might hurt a little," he said, reaching for a small tool. He had barely moved when she suddenly jerked away from him, eyes wide, breath fast. "Wait," she cried, pressing herself into the wall. Jaron froze. "It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you," but it was too late. She was trembling all over, her hands covering her head like she was waiting for a blow. He backed away slowly and put the tool down. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have asked better. I moved too fast." Tears formed in her eyes, but she wiped them with her arm quickly, like she had done it too many times before. "No pain," she whispered. "Please, no pain." Jaron's throat tightened. What had they done to her? He knelt down slowly, keeping his hands on his knees so she could see them. "I'll never hurt you, not ever," he said, "even if it means the tracker stays. I won't touch you without your yes." She stared at him, breathing hard. Then, after a long silence, she stepped forward on shaky legs. She took his hand just for a second. Her fingers were cold, and they let go almost immediately. But it was a beginning. Later that night, she came to him silently while he was repairing a broken drone. She stood beside him and whispered, "Try again, but slow." Jaron looked up, surprised. He nodded. She sat down, brushing her hair to one side, exposing the back of her neck. She was still shaking, but she didn't pull away this time. Jaron worked slowly, telling her every step before he made a move. "This is the scanner. It only looks. This tool just loosens the cap." Almost there. Each sentence was a promise, and he kept them. When the tracker finally clicked loose and fell to the ground, she let out a breath like she had been holding it for years. He placed a small device into a container and crushed it under a metal press. The red light blinked one last time, then went dark forever. She reached up, touched her neck, and smiled just a little. Then she said, "Free." Jaron looked her in the eyes. Yes, that night. She didn't sleep on the couch. She lay on a pile of pillows close to Jaren's workspace. Not next to him, but not far either. He looked over at her before turning off the lights. "Good night," he said softly. She didn't reply. But after a few moments, in the dark, she whispered back, "Good night, Jaren." It was the first time she said his name, and for him, it meant more than anything else in the world. The next few days moved. Slowly, but peacefully. Jaren made small changes in the cabin, added a second blanket to the couch, placed soft mats near the heater, and put 2 bowls on the table instead of 1. He didn't say anything about it, but she noticed. And every time she saw something made just for her, her eyes softened, even if her lips didn't smile yet. She was still quiet, still careful, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She ate small meals, asked short questions, and only once laughed when Jaren dropped a wrench on his own foot and yelled like a cartoon. He froze when he heard her laugh. It was small and quick, but real, like sunlight peeking through a crack in the clouds. That night, she sat at the table across from him, fingers tapping the edge gently. She stared at her hands, then looked up and asked, "Why do you treat me like I'm real?" Her voice was steady but unsure, like she was waiting to be corrected. Jaren blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked back down, speaking slowly. "They used to scan me, program me, order me. I was a unit, a bioform designed for basic tasks. No one asked me if I was hungry. No one gave me a name." She looked up again, eyes filled with quiet sadness. "But you ask me things. You listen. You care. Why?" Jaren took a deep breath, then said softly, "Because you are not a machine. You think, you feel, you choose. That makes you real." She stared at him, her hands frozen. No one had ever said that to her before. Not the scientists, not the traders, not the buyers. Real, a word that sounded too big for her. Jaren stood and poured her some warm tea, sliding it gently across the table. "I don't care what they called you," he said. "I see someone sitting in front of me, not a tool." She picked up the cup with both hands and held it close. She didn't drink, just held it, as if trying to absorb the warmth. "Did you ever have a name?" Jaren asked gently. She shook her head. "Just a number, 9H. He frowned. "That's not a name. That's a barcode." He paused, thinking, then asked, "Can I give you one?" Her eyes widened. "Me? Name?" He nodded. "Only if you want one." She looked around the room as if checking if this was a trick, then whispered, "Okay." Jaren smiled. "How about Sci-Fi? It means starborn in an old Earth language." She repeated it slowly. Sci. The way she said it made the room feel brighter. "I like it," she said softly. Sci. Jaren leaned back, relief on his face. Then Sci. "It is." That night, she asked if she could sleep near the window. He made a soft bed with blankets and old cushions. She sat beside the glass and looked up at the sky full of stars. "Do you think my mother ever looked at these stars too?" she asked. Jaren didn't know what to say. He just sat beside her and looked up with her. "I think she did," he said, "and I think she hoped you'd be safe one day." Sarai didn't reply, but her hand gently brushed against his, not holding it, just touching. The next day, something changed. She started humming softly while helping him fix wires. She sat beside him instead of across the room. And when he handed her a fresh shirt to wear, one that wasn't torn or stained, she held it like it was treasure. She began asking questions. "2. What's this tool called? Why does your machine make that noise? Is that soup spicy?" Jaren answered each one with a smile. He was patient, and Sci was eager. She learned fast, like her mind had always been sharp but was just waiting for someone to see it. That evening, they shared a simple dinner of bread and broth. Jaren talked about Earth, how it used to have forests and rivers. Not like this dusty mining world. Sarai listened quietly, her eyes shining. When he was done, she said, "If I'm real now, does that mean I can choose?" "Yes," Jaren said. "You can choose anything." She nodded slowly, then asked, "Can I choose to stay?" Jaren's heart skipped. He tried to stay calm. "Yes, if that's what you want." Sarai smiled not. Just with her lips this time, but with her whole face. A smile full of hope, not fear. And Jaren knew in that moment he hadn't just saved someone, he had brought her back to life. The sky was dark and quiet. Sarai stood near the cabin window, her eyes fixed on the stars. It had become her habit. Every night she'd gaze at the sky, but tonight felt different. The stars were the same, but the wind was not. It was too still. To silent, inside the cabin, Jaren was asleep on his cot, one arm over his chest, the other holding a small device he had been repairing. Sarai listened closely. There was no animal sound, no engine hum from far mining camps, only cold silence. Then she felt it. A low vibration in the floor beneath her bare feet, a slow rumble, soft but unnatural. She rushed to the control panel and switched on the outer cam, there on the ridge. Just beyond the hill a shadow moved, a ship, small, black, and silent. Landing with no signal, no lights, Sarai's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the shape. Those ships were used by trackers, bounty hunters, and reclaimers. They didn't knock, they took, and they were here for her. She turned and shook Jaren awake. He blinked up at her, groggy. "What's wrong?" Her voice trembled. "They found me." He jumped up, grabbed his jacket, and checked the monitors. "Damn," he muttered. No ID tags, no signal, just shadows. Sarai backed away from the window, her fingers clenching the edge of the wall. "They won't ask questions. They'll drag me back." Jaren looked at her. "We're not letting that happen." He opened the storage box under the table and pulled out a shock baton and a flare launcher. "I don't have weapons for war, but I can delay them." "No," Sarai whispered. "They'll hurt you." "I don't care," Jaren replied. "You are not going back into a cage." Outside, the ship door opened. Figures stepped out, tall, armored, faces hidden behind red-tinted visors. One of them scanned the air, then pointed toward Jaren's cabin. They had her signal even without the tracker. They had found her scent, her heat, her trail. Jaren turned to Sarai. "Go into the tunnel behind the workbench. It leads to the cliffs. Hide there." She shook her head. "I'm not leaving you." "Please," he said. "Just until I can hold them off." She took a step forward, then stopped. A memory hit her. A memory of being dragged by the arm. Lights flashing, voices yelling, pain shooting through her spine as she was chained and sold. No, not again. Her hands began to glow, faint at first, just a soft light under her skin. But it grew brighter, pulsing from her palms, her chest, her eyes. Jaren stepped back, shocked. "Sarah, what's happening?" "I don't know," she said, breathing fast. "But I feel strong." Her body floated an inch above the floor. Energy wrapping around her like armor made of light. The door burst open and 3 hunters rushed in. Weapons raised before Jaren could move. Sarai lifted her hand. A wave of force knocked the hunters backward, slamming them into the walls. They groaned, their weapons sparking and falling to the floor. Jaren stared at her, eyes wide. "You're not just a hybrid." Sarai turned to him, her voice firm. "I was made in a lab. Yes, but I was born too. They called me synthetic, but I'm not just coat and skin. I'm alive, I'm real, and I won't be taken again." The ship outside powered up, preparing to fire a stun blast at the cabin. Sarai walked out into the cold, barefoot, glowing. She raised both arms to the sky. The ship fired, and the beam of energy curved in the air and shattered like glass before it could touch her. Inside, Jaren watched from the door. Stunned. She wasn't a tool. She wasn't a machine. She was something new, something powerful, and human in a way no one had ever allowed her to be. The hunters ran back to their ship, dragging their injured comrade. They took off fast, disappearing into the sky. Sci stood alone in the night. Her glow faded, and her feet touched the ground again. Her knees buckled, and Joran ran forward, catching her just before she fell. He held her tightly. She looked up at him with weak eyes and whispered, "I didn't want them to take me away from you. You're safe now," Jaren said. Brushing her hair back, "You saved both of us." She closed her eyes, resting her head on his chest. She didn't feel like a prisoner anymore. She felt like someone who had finally fought back and won. Jaren laid Sci gently on the couch. Her body was warm, too warm. Her skin glowed faintly under her collarbone. Soft pulses of light moving with each shallow breath. He sat beside her, worried. Holding a damp cloth to her forehead, she had collapsed after the hunters ran. After the ship disappeared into the sky like a fading shadow, the girl who couldn't speak just days ago had stood between him and death. Now she was burning from the inside. Her eyes fluttered open, slow and weak. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You don't look okay," Jaren replied, voice soft but firm. She tried to sit up, but her arms trembled, so he helped support her. "It happened before," she said, "back when I was very small. The first time they tried to shut me down." Jaren's brows furrowed. "Shut you down?" Sci nodded slowly. "They thought I was a failure. They tried to erase me, but something fought back." She reached for his hand, guiding it to her chest, right where the soft light pulsed beneath her skin. "It's not tech. It's not code," she said quietly. "It's something alive." Jaren sat back, stunned. He had assumed she was some kind of biosynthetic hybrid, part machine, part organic, like others use for labor or dangerous missions. But what she was describing was different. "You weren't built like the others, were you?" he asked. Sci looked down, her voice shaking. "No, I wasn't built. I was grown in a hidden lab, deep underground. They used DNA from different worlds. They mixed it, shaped it. They didn't create a product. They created a child." Jaren's breath caught in his chest. She wasn't a tool. She was life. A life that was never meant to be free. They wanted to make soldiers, spies, controlled minds and perfect bodies. Sci continued. "But I felt things. I asked questions. I cried. I disobeyed. That scared them." She clutched the blanket tighter around her. "I wasn't supposed to have emotions," she whispered. "I wasn't supposed to protect anyone, but I protected you," Jaren nodded slowly, "and I'm still here because of it." He took her hand in both of his. Gently, "You didn't fail, Sci. You became more than what they expected. They wanted a machine," he said, "but they accidentally made a soul." She blinked, eyes glassy, a single tear slipped down her cheek. "You keep saying things no one ever told me before. I don't know what to do with them." "You don't have to do anything," Jaren said. "Just believe them, slowly. You're not a mistake, Sci. You're a miracle." Outside, soft wind brushed against the metal cabin. The danger had passed for now, but Jaren knew they would come again. People didn't let go of what they couldn't control. That night, Sci didn't ask for space. She sat beside Jaren, leaning gently against his shoulder, her breathing even, her eyes finally calm. They sat in silence until Sci spoke again. "What if there are others like me?" Jaren looked at her. "Do you think there are?" "Don't know," she said. "But if I was born, not made, then maybe someone else was too." Jaren nodded. "Then maybe you're not alone." He paused, then added, "And even if you are, you're not alone here." She smiled, eyes still full of questions, but no longer full of fear. "I want to find out who I really am," she whispered. "Not what they called me, not what they labeled me, but who I am." Really? Then we'll figure it out, Jaren said. Together, later, as Sarai lay resting. Jaren sat by the console. He accessed deep channels of the dark network, searching for clues, hidden messages, encrypted files, and there, buried behind firewalls and fake data, he found something, a single phrase repeated again and again. Project Seraph. Terminate all survivors. Jaren leaned back in his chair, blood running cold. They weren't. Dun Sarai wasn't the only one, and somewhere, someone wanted her erased. He looked over at her peaceful face, her soft breathing. She had survived things no one should. But she wasn't done fighting, and neither was he. Morning light poured through the small window of the cabin. It touched Sarai's face gently, warming her skin as she stirred beneath the thick blanket. Her eyes opened slowly, soft and calm. There was no fear this time, no panic, just breath, and warmth and safety across the room. Jaren stood by the stove, cooking something that smelled like real food, not from a packet, not from a machine, real ingredients, warm and full of care. He glanced over his shoulder and smiled. You're up? Sarai sat up slowly, her muscles sore but strong. She nodded. I'm still here. He handed her a bowl of soup, steam rising from it. She took it with both hands, eyes shining with quiet thanks. As she ate, Jaren sat beside her, not speaking, just sharing the space for a moment. Nothing else existed, just the warmth between them, the soft sounds of spoons and breath. After breakfast, Sarai stood by the door, looking out into the pale hills. I used to think I was made only for orders, she said, voice steady. Obey, serve, follow. That was all I knew. Jaren came up beside her, and now? Sarai looked at him, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes full of something new. Hope. Now I think I can choose. I can walk. I can speak. I can stay. She turned toward him, stepping closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but only if I'm still welcome. Jaren didn't answer with words. He opened his arms, and she walked straight into them. He held her, gently but firmly, like someone he never wanted to let go. You're not just welcome, he said softly. You're home. They stood like that for a long time, and in that quiet moment, something inside her healed. The broken code, the false beliefs, the voices that once told her she was nothing, they all faded. Because someone saw her not as a tool, not as property, but as a person. That afternoon, Sarai helped Jaren pack supplies. They had made a decision they would leave the mining camp. They couldn't hide forever, and Sarai needed answers. She wanted to find the truth about the lab, the others, the so-called Project Seraph. If there were more like her, they deserved to be found, not hunted, not erased, protected like she was. Jaren loaded the rover, checking every wire, every fuel cell. Sarai folded maps, tucked food away, and smiled when she saw 2 sets of blankets instead of 1. Before sunset, they stood outside the cabin one last time. Sarai looked at the building that once held her silence, her fear, and now her freedom. She placed her hand on the wall and whispered, "Thank you." Jaren climbed into the driver's seat, and Sarai sat beside him as the rover rolled over the hills. She asked quietly, "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" Jaren smiled gently. "What's normal?" "Being kind, being strong, choosing your path. That sounds pretty special to me." She nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. The sun was setting behind them, and the stars were starting to appear. She pointed at one. "That one," she said, "that's where I'll build something new. One day, maybe a home where no one gets labeled or locked away." Jaren looked up at the same star. "Then that's where we'll go," he said. One step at a time. As the rover moved into the night, Sarai closed her eyes. She no longer felt like a machine, no longer a mistake, no longer broken. She was Sarai, a name given not by code, but by kindness. A life shaped not by control, but by love. And the man beside her, the one who had once thought he was buying a tool, had unknowingly gained something far greater. A partner, a survivor, a soul. From now on, she would choose her own path, and wherever it led, she knew one thing for sure. She belonged only to herself, but her heart would always remember the human who made her feel real.